What's going on, guys? Obviously, it's Cap. Now it's got a Battlefield 3 gameplay commentary for you guys today. I'm playing some team deathmatch on the map 9 to 5, or Operation 9 to 5, if you guys want to call it that. I'm using the FAMAS, which is one of my more favorite close-range weapons in the game. After they patched it in the last patch, it actually got a lot better. The recoil was reduced a little bit, but I still believe that the FAMAS is the dominant weapon in close range. Sometimes it even beats out a shotgun in many different scenarios. So FAMAS is your go-to weapon for any kind of close-range activity, and I will always recommend the FAMAS, even though people will say it's not great at long range. If you guys know you're going to be in close range, FAMAS just cannot be beat. And I guess it kind of relates to the topic of today's commentary. We're talking more about close quarters. Now, close quarters came out a while ago, back in June of last year, and I really don't understand what happened with this DLC. Now, a few different scenarios here, and a few different opinions as to what I believe DICE did wrong with close quarters. Now, obviously, the intention of close quarters was to bring in a different audience of players. They wanted to bring in Call of Duty gamers, people who don't play Battlefield because of the big maps and the big team sizes, but want to have a high-action gameplay, which is one of the main criticisms of Battlefield in the first place. So once they introduced close quarters, I can say without a shadow of a doubt, Battlefield and DICE got more sales and more players just because they have more close-range maps in the game now. But the unfortunate part of that is that it just didn't have the power to hold on to these people as they may have hoped it would. Call of Duty and all the other games have 20 or so maps that are always changing, but DICE only added 4. They only added 4 close-range maps to the game, and that is not enough maps to keep an audience satisfied. So DICE's sales and Battlefield 3 sales start to dip off after close quarters, and the more traditional Battlefield crowd was kind of put off by DICE in regards to this, because they felt like DICE was not really trying to go for the user experience, just get those Call of Duty gamers into their series, which they did successfully do, but in the end it didn't really work out because close quarters was deemed a sort of a failure in terms of a DLC because no one really plays it anymore, even though I played it a few times. But I think what I'm trying to get across here to you guys is the issue with this DLC model, the issue with the model of putting out staggered content after a game comes out just to keep the life of the game rolling is more than likely going to be a hit and a miss. Either the gameplay and the new DLC added is going to make the game last longer and make the game more enjoyable for people, or it's just going to put off a whole different sort of demographic of people, like the more hardcore Battlefield gamers, like you and I, like Close Quarters did to us. Now, Close Quarters was a DLC that I really look forward to. It did not put me off at all, but for some people, it really did. So I think the question in today's commentary for you guys is going to be, do you think that Endgame should have the ability to sort of keep Battlefield's, current players, or try to reach out to other different demographics of players? Now, the reason I say this is because over the past few weeks and month, there's been a lot of talk about DICE advertising via YouTubers about their upcoming DLC, specifically Aftermath and Endgame. Now, Aftermath was sort of tailored to the more close-range maps like we see in the map pack. I mean, we got Epicenter, which is pretty close quarters, and we got Talon Market, which is pretty close quarters. So when these maps are introduced to a different demographic of people, they like the game. So, do you think DICE is actually going to go for the pleasing their fans model of making Endgame more Battlefield related, or do you honestly think that they're just going to screw us all over and just go with a map pack or a DLC that they believe can draw in more more players, just to make their game last a bit longer until the Battlefield 4 beta this autumn? Now let's get back to this hit and the miss concept of DLC. When you go put out a DLC, you're kind of flying blind. You don't have a backing behind a game like you did for Battlefield 3 in its initial release, and you don't have a backing like you had for a game like Call of Duty in its initial release. You have like half the community wanting DLC and going to pay for it, and you have the other half of the community not really going to want to pay for it. When you have a game that actually releases the full game for the first time, you know, I guess you could say that everybody buys the game. Everybody who's going to play the game buys it. But when you put out DLC, not everybody who owns the game is going to buy it. So I guess you judge your success on your DLC based upon how many people buy it. Let's look at this. From what I've known, or what I've come to realize, I think Close Quarters had the highest sales, or one of the highest sales, out of any of the Battlefield 3 DLCs. And Karkan obviously had the most because it came with the game. Armored Kill more than likely had the least because of its stray away from Battlefield 3 and making enormous maps. Battlefield 3 had the medium size and the large maps. Armored Kill had absolutely enormous maps. So some of us, like me, really did not get the enjoyment out of Battlefield from Armored Kill. So that's why they kind of lost some sales there. Aftermath definitely did pick up the sales for their DLC because of the hype it got from the YouTube community. People loved Aftermath on YouTube. And because of the advertising that they did for Aftermath after the flop of Medal of Honor Warfighter. So, do you think that Endgame is going to flop in terms of, actual purchases? Not in terms of enjoyment, but in terms of people actually buying the DLC. Now, Premium, in my opinion, is not going to count here because Premium users already know that they're going to want to get it. I think we got to take a look at here are the people who do not have Premium and only bought, Close Quarters or something, gonna buy Endgame because they feel like it looks appealing, or do you think they're gonna buy Endgame just because it's another Battlefield 3 DLC? Now, here's the issue here. Just like what happened to Close Quarters, and just like what happened when Close Quarters was released to a different demographic of people, the Call of Duty players, Battlefield lost a significant amount of players. But DICE's goal here is to keep their players on board until Battlefield 4. So, we got a little bit of a problem here. If Endgame does not get as many sales, and if Endgame does not please the audience that they're trying to, go for, Battlefield's done. I mean, you look at Aftermath, you look at Armored Kill, they are probably, or Aftermath, is probably going to have about a lifespan of about a month. Armored Kill had a lifespan about a month, or, possibly a month and a half. Close Quarters was probably around 3 weeks to 4 months, and Karkan is still kicking because those maps are absolutely awesome. So, I think that Endgame is going to determine just what happens to Battlefield after it releases. If Endgame sucks, the game's over. The game is just going to flop, and DICE is probably going to forget about it because since they're not getting sales off of their last DLC or supposed last DLC, they've lost all the fans that have been wanting to get the DLC over time. You see what I'm saying here? So they have to hit a home run with Endgame, or else Battlefield is going to be over and not going to be supported until Battlefield 4 comes out. So let me know your opinions on today's topic in the comment section below. I'd love to hear about them. I think it's a pretty interesting topic because it has to do with all of us and our wants and needs for Battlefield 4 and Battlefield 3. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please give me a thumbs up. That helps out a lot. Follow me on Twitter. And as always, rate, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see you guys later.